What happened at your workplace that made multiple people quit at the same time? Story 1. They laid off half the company without warning, including a gentleman who was less than a year away from retirement and had been there for over 35 years. The company was shocked when half of the remaining employees jumped ship shortly afterward. Story 2. The company consistently outpaced its competitors and emerged as one of the industry's leading agencies. Since it was a California tech firm, wearing shorts, flip-flops, having beers at lunch, and getting high on the roof were all fairly common. However, we were growing rapidly, and the atmosphere and location made us a highly desirable workplace for talent. Anyway, after the CFO and CMO cashed out, the CEO decided to completely remodel the company to make it more corporate. On top of that, they set unattainable goals and revoked our work-from-home policy. The final straw was replacing our generous vacation policy with unlimited vacation, which was really just a facade for, you can take as much time off as we approve. Story 3. When I was 16, I worked at the concession stand in a minor league baseball stadium. Minimum wage at the time was $5.15 per hour, but this job paid $8, and since it was always in the evenings, it was perfect for a high school student. The only downside was that our management was terrible. The main manager would throw toddler-level tantrums at least once per shift over stupid bullshit, like not ordering enough of a specific beer, even though she was in charge of ordering, or running out of pre-cut lemons for tea. One night, the stadium was running a promotion, and it was insanely busy, easily 2 to 3 times the normal volume of customers. We were all busting our asses, handling multiple roles with absolutely no downtime. Although we cleaned as we worked, nobody had the chance to do a full deep clean because of the never-ending horde of hungry baseball fans. As usual, the manager showed up 3 to 4 hours late and threw the biggest tantrum yet over the unswept floor. Finally, she announced, "Listen up, you lazy fucks. Minimal work gets minimal pay. Everyone is getting paid minimum wage tonight because you slobs won't clean up anything." Both bartenders and the barback quit on the spot, triggering a chain reaction. We all took off our aprons and hats and walked out. She blocked the exit, screaming with her face red. So one of the cooks climbed out of one of the big serving windows where we served customers. I did the same, and most of the staff followed. Keep in mind, this all happened in front of 200+ customers. Of course, my final paycheck got lost, so I had to file a wage theft complaint with the Texas Workforce Commission. Story 4. The owners retired, and they were truly the greatest people, both incredibly kind while keeping the place running like a well-oiled machine. They took great care of us in their restaurant. When they left, they handed the business over to their nephew, who at the time was a busboy/waiter. He was somewhat standoffish, didn't interact with us much, and could be lazy at times, but for the most part, he did his job and went home. He seemed okay, until he got the power of being the owner. On his very first day, right before the Friday night dinner rush, he fired 4 employees, including 2 of the 4 cooks and 2 of the 3 dishwashers, all because he didn't like their attitude. He refused to honor vacation requests that had already been approved by the original owners, randomly changed the schedule without notifying anyone, and then screamed at people when they missed a shift or showed up late because of it. He refused to restock the kitchen until we had completely run out of supplies, then dragged his feet on placing orders. He would show up randomly to drink at the bar, for free, of course, since he was the owner, and bring in all his buddies, who would get completely out of hand, grabbing at women and trying to start fights. Within the first month, over half the staff had quit, many walking out in the middle of their shifts after being screamed at. They'd throw down their aprons, apologize to the rest of us, and say they just couldn't take it anymore. The breaking point was when our last cook, a big guy who usually kept the kitchen running smoothly and in good spirits, broke down crying in the middle of his shift after the owner berated him for being too slow and making slop. He dropped everything and walked out, and the rest of us followed. For months later, the restaurant shut down. His aunt and uncle were absolutely furious and devastated that he had run the business they had built over 30 years straight into the ground. Story 5. I was hired by the new owners to replace the existing manager. I was under the impression that he was moving on to another job. After about 4 days, I asked him where he was headed and if he was excited. He just stared at me blankly and said, "I'm not going anywhere. I'm just training you as the assistant manager, right?" The look on my face must have given it away because he immediately got up and walked into one of the new owner's offices. About 30 seconds later, they were screaming at each other. Then he stormed out, grabbed his stuff, flipped me off, and left. Over the next few days, I tried to smooth things over with the employees. They didn't blame me, but they were already developing a strong dislike for the new owners. Within a span of 7 to 10 days, my team shrank from 15 people down to just 3. I did my best to keep things running while we tried to hire new staff, but the owners were offering such low wages that we struggled to find replacements. After about 3 months, I was getting fed up and overwhelmed. The owners started coming down on me for missed deadlines, despite the fact that we were still operating with just 5 people, 2 of whom were brand new and still in training. They wouldn't allow me to decline work or push deadlines back and expected the same output as a 15-person team. After my 3rd consecutive day of being berated for missing an impossible deadline, I'd had enough. I quit. Story 6. I'm the manager of a retail store, and I discovered that a cashier was stealing by scamming the reward card system. I put together a detailed incident report to present to her, assuming she was the only one involved. When I confronted her in a reasonable manner, she completely freaked out, got angry, and quit on the spot. She had been using fake accounts instead of actual customers' reward cards to accumulate points for herself, which she then redeemed for products and gift cards. This meant customers weren't getting the points they were owed, which would be a huge headache for me if they noticed and complained. The next day, every other cashier called and quit. After sitting there wondering WTF just happened, I found out they had all been in on it, using the fake accounts on their shifts too. Suddenly, I was down 4 cashiers, with only 1 left. That same day, my last remaining cashier disappeared for 20 minutes. Turns out, she was in the bathroom getting busy with another employee. She ended up quitting because her dad is a cop, and she didn't want him to find out she got fired for this. Oh, and before she left, she also asked me if she should go to urgent care because she forgot to remove her tampon before they did it and couldn't find it. The guy also quit because he didn't care and was moving anyway. At that point, I was left with literally just the managers. So, the first part was the mass exodus. The last part was just 4. Can you believe this shit? Story 7. I worked at a Wendy's where one of the regional managers had to take over running a store because they couldn't, or wouldn't, hire new managers to replace the old ones. Well, this guy practically ran the place into the ground. Before he took over, most of us actually liked working there. It was a good environment. But within a few months, people started quitting because of him. One morning, I rolled in at 9 a.m. to help open the store. As soon as I parked, I was 15 minutes early and usually just sat in my car until my shift started. He came out and said, "Hey, I need you to start early because the 3 openers just quit on me." We somehow managed to get the store open, with employees from other locations coming in to help until the next shift arrived. A couple of days later, I got the full story from a coworker. The regional manager was supposed to be there at 7 a.m., with the openers arriving 30 minutes later. Instead, he didn't show up until 8:30. The openers, already pissed about being at work so early without being on the clock, saw him rolling late and realized the shift was going to be awful. So they all decided they were done and quit on the spot. By the time I left, at least 6 people had quit because of him. Probably more after I was gone. Story 8. Many years ago, when I was in high school, I worked at a movie theater. From the moment I started, the place was poorly run. We never got paid on time, and management was a bunch of lazy jackasses who sat in the office talking all day instead of actually managing. Things were already bad, but after a couple of months, they brought in new management that seemed determined to make the theater run even worse. Their first brilliant move was implementing a new policy requiring all projectionists to wear ties, despite the fact that projectionists were never seen by the public. Oh, and minor detail. They worked around giant, rapidly spinning machinery that a tie could easily get caught in. Management refused to reconsider, so every single projectionist quit. Next, they decided that door attendants, which included me, who were previously scheduled 7 days a week, would now only be scheduled on weekends. Worse, they refused to reassign any of us to concessions during the weekdays to keep our hours. As a result, almost every door attendant quit, including me. Then, they started imposing impossible cleanliness standards on concessions, like requiring employees to scrape popcorn kernels out of the cracks in the trim behind the popcorn machines. Concession staff were stuck there until 5 a.m. trying to meet these ridiculous standards. Most of them quit, too. By my count, the theater went from a staff of about 50 to just 12 in 3 weeks. About a month after I quit, I stopped by and found out that the entire management team had been fired and replaced yet again. This time by people who actually seemed to be running the theater properly. My best guess is that the previous management had been told to whip the theater into shape, but were complete idiots who had no idea how to do it effectively. Story 9. Working at a local restaurant that had recently changed owners came with multiple issues. Difficulty getting time off for important matters, hiring cheap but incompetent kitchen staff, using lower quality ingredients, and an owner who mostly just sat around drinking instead of doing any real work. Things were tense, and after a few months, we were really just hanging in there because we liked each other. The previous owners, a sweet old couple, had set a great atmosphere. Some of us had already started looking for other jobs. One of the waitresses was a young mother who really needed the job and couldn't afford to be between jobs. One night, she got a call that her grandmother had suffered a severe stroke, was unresponsive, and wasn't expected to make it through the night. She asked to leave immediately and start the 3-hour drive to Dallas. The manager agreed without hesitation, but the owner refused. This led to a shouting match between the manager and the owner in the back, while the waitress pleaded, crying. The manager finally told the owner that if he wouldn't let her go, he was done. The owner responded by firing them both on the spot. Within the next 15 minutes, everyone who hadn't been a recent hire walked out of the building. Story 10. Worked at the SPCA. The month I was hired, there were a lot of changes happening because several managerial and senior staff were moving on to other things. It quickly turned into a shit show when a new manager came in. On top of that, the district manager tried to screw the senior staff out of their bonuses, EI, and other benefits. But the most controversial decision was when the new manager and her bosses decided to save money by stopping the spaying and neutering of cats before adopting them out. Real fucking smart idea. Then, the district manager insisted that the SPCA needed more income, so if we got a good purebred dog off the streets, instead of registering it, we were supposed to take it home, breed it, care for the puppies on our own dime, and then surrender them back to the SPCA for some extra profit. They also shut down their grooming facilities, which accounted for about 55% of their income. What made me quit was that I had been hired to replace their tech, but I wasn't being properly trained. The current tech kept sending me off to clean dog pens or cat rooms instead of actually showing me how to work the systems. After a month of this, despite me constantly mentioning it, I came in one day and found my name omitted from the schedule. The manager's reasoning? Oh well, you struggled a bit the day you were the only tech, so we dropped you from full-time to on-call. We're gonna hire someone else and train them to take over the role. Great job. I already knew about 90% of the job by that point, and they were just going to hire someone else and train them the same way I had been trained? No thanks. I quit. Apparently, things only got worse after I left. In total, the SPCA lost 11 employees in about 3 weeks due to negligence, stupidity, and terrible management. Me and 7 others went to the PetSmart on the other side of town since it had just opened and needed employees, so it wasn't all bad. But the mismanagement at that location was absolutely insane. And that was just the tip of the iceberg. My former coworkers later told me even worse things that happened after I left. Edit. Adding more details about the chaos. After I left, management continued trying to cut costs. One of their bright ideas? Not paying for shampoo, conditioner, and other supplies for the salon. Instead, they told the salon manager to pay for them out of her own pocket. That was just the beginning of the nightmare for her. She was bullied and almost assaulted before they finally fired her. When she tried to claim EI after getting fired, management denied that she was fired and instead claimed she had quit under hostile circumstances or some other bullshit. Fortunately, she landed the salon manager position at PetSmart, and nearly all of the SPCA's grooming clients followed her there, completely killing the SPCA's salon business. Another coworker quit because he was expected to take care of 48 dog kennels and twice that amount of cat habitats alone. They had cut staffing so much that instead of 6 people opening in the mornings, they only had 3, meaning he was forced to do a 4-person job in 3 hours. Another coworker quit because Thanks to the low staffing, tasks were constantly left undone. She came in for her morning shift to find a mountain of dog food and water dishes stacked together with dirty litter pans that hadn't been washed. This meant the animals couldn't be fed or watered properly, and the cats had to wait for fresh litter. That was the day she quit. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, activate the notification bell, and share a similar story or anything you'd like to say in the comments. See you next time.